Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will have there Henri Pirkkalainen from Tampere University, and he will tell you something about value creation with social extended reality. And please, if you want to write your question, write it to this discuss, and at the end will be questions answered.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome also on my behalf. My name is Henri Pirkkalainen. I work as an associate professor in Tampere University. So let's proceed. So I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me to be part of the International Week. Today I wanted to discuss with you a bit about one of my favorite topics that we work on in my research group here in Tampere University. So it's the social extended reality. So this is a kind of an emerging technology that has lots of promise, but there are many things that we still don't know about it. And I would like to discuss some of these aspects together with you, that you have also a bit of a better overview on what this technology is and what does it enable you to do. So first of all, I come from Tampere University. So if you don't know where it is, so Finland, high up north. Tampere is one of the largest cities in Finland, and Tampere University is similarly one of the biggest universities in Finland. It's one of the most multidisciplinary universities and has a good range of field of studies represented in our university. And actually, the thing is that Tampere University was actually formed only less than 2 years ago, because there was a merger of 3 universities here in Tampere. So there was the prior Tampere University, there was the Tampere University of Technology, where I personally worked on with information management unit, and then there was the University of Applied Sciences. That now there's a merger, and this 3 became one in a way to create a new foundation-based university. And approximately we have 30,000 degree students annually, and about 40,000 degrees conferred. So, but that's very briefly about the university. What you see there in the background would be the typical office where I would be. So I'm there at this campus in Hervanta. Also what you see in the figure, the thing is that we have 3 campuses, but there aren't mostly any students at the moment due to the COVID-19 situation. And as you can see from the figure of my video feed, is that I'm also not personally at the office at the moment, so I'm working remotely. And actually the topic that I'm discussing to you is quite much about new ways of doing remote work. So I think this might give you a good way of elaborate on my presentation and what could it bring to these new ways of working remotely. There are a couple of things that we should understand about the topic of the presentation. So, when we talk about extended reality, the first thing that technology that relates to is virtual reality. I'm sure many of you have already experiences about virtual reality technology. It's more or less something that provides the effect of immersion in an interactive 3D computer-generated environment. And the basic idea is, of course, that you use a particular virtual reality headset to replace your physical reality with a virtual one. That's the very basic idea. It's also that in VR, the content or the environment where you are can be, of course, fully fictional. It doesn't have to be anything from the real world. It could be something from a fantasy, or it could be a computer game environment. But similarly, there aren't kind of any restrictions on what there is in the VR, because it could be also that you are visiting Paris. So the environment where you are embedding yourself in could be a physical location somewhere around the world, or it could be similarly to the other picture that you see in here, is that a cockpit of a helicopter. That is really typical when we are simulating some real-life activities, for example, training pilots. So the thing about virtual reality is that it can be more or less anything. It can be content created from fiction or from the real world, brought into the virtual reality. The other technology that is essential for extended reality is augmented reality. And I think the more we use, mobile phones, the more we get accustomed slowly to use of augmented reality, because augmented reality is basically, adding digital information to our physical world, and this is the one that differentiates it from virtual reality. On the right, you kind of see the basic idea is that, for example, IKEA has this application where you can more or less browse around their catalog and see, the products, furniture, how it would, for example, fit your living room or here the upstairs where I'm at. So through your smartphone or tablet camera, you can more or less like visualize how that digital information is portrayed in your natural environment. So that's something that's different from virtual reality, because again, with virtual reality, you were switching on to a fully virtual environment and you don't anymore see what is around you. Here on the other picture on the hand, you see something that is closer to like gets us closer a bit to the virtual reality glasses in a way. You see there kind of a HoloLens glasses that enable you to, without your hands being free, you don't have to use a smartphone or a tablet to visualize that 3D information in front of you. You are using AR glasses for that. But they are different, from this virtual reality glasses, because they are, the see-through glasses that kind of just include information, any kind of digital information in front of you, for example, in the screen. When we think about these two technologies together, they kind of form an understanding of extended reality technologies. So they are virtual reality technologies and augmented reality technologies and everything in between, even this kind of a mixed reality that we don't talk too much about in this presentation. And the topic that we are essentially looking into in my research team is this social extended reality, which is the kind of a multi-user perspective of this. So it's when you have multiple people, collaborators, in the same virtual space. For example, that there are my research team that are all around the Tampere and also in other cities, is that we all have these HMD devices. We put them on, open a certain collaborative application. Here we are in Teams, but it could be some VR application where we can see each other similarly to how we are in this natural environment, and we can kind of shake hands, and we are of course represented there as avatars, as you see in the figure. And this is a completely new avenue of virtual reality that didn't exist multiple years ago. And some of the most promising, because it opens up many new possibilities for companies in all kinds of remote working situations, but also for training and education and so on. So this is the top what we are going to discuss today about. The thing that should be understood is that there was a big game changer in 2016 for augmented and virtual reality technologies. And I would say that it's a similar moment to, when in the figure you see like a couple of decades ago when, the first graphical interface was released for Windows 95. And the kind of same thing happened for virtual reality and augmented reality in 2016, and especially for virtual reality. There was a crowdfunding campaign by Oculus Rift, and there had been since then, major developments in terms of processing power of virtual reality devices. A lot of the information can be, handled via the internet, through cloud services that we can stream information online directly to our devices, similarly to like watching any Netflix or similar. So many things that were there kinda for virtual reality before that were now possible in a completely new scale. And the funny thing is, of course, that virtual reality has been talked about for a couple of decades already, and there have been good use cases, for example, in simulation and medical treatment and so on. But the technology just didn't scale. It wasn't just mature enough, because it requires so much computing power to visualize this kind of a natural environments in front of your face in VR. And one thing that also has been now like changing in the last couple of years is that, previously virtual reality has been, always bound to this really powerful PC that you need where you connect with wires, this headsets, and you usually use, I'm not sure if you see it, but behind me there are a couple of beacons in my room that kind of track where I am at that point in time. To use virtual reality, and it's actually that those devices are quite expensive. Especially in more industrial use, when we are dealing with really complex model like 3D models and similar, the computing power, it just requires quite much of power in a way, and these devices, because they were so costly, is that they couldn't be scaled for the normal user in a way. But lately, there have been more of these standalone devices coming to the market, similarly what I have right here in my hand. This is called the Oculus Quest. It's actually, a product of Oculus, the one that had this Kickstarter campaign. But the thing is that Facebook bought Oculus, and it's now a product of Facebook. And of course, many might say that, okay, now there's Facebook and these big players are involved, that there's much of the, the power in the market is distributed towards those big players, and it's a bit infectious or something for the VR scene. But actually, what it has enabled is that these devices have kind of become similar, platforms as, in your smartphone, you might think that you have app stores or Google Play stores and similar, that you can browse through many kinds of applications that you can use in your daily life and in work. The same is now happening for these standalone devices, so that they actually contain, online these big catalogs of applications, VR applications that you can run. And the new device of Oculus Quest, Oculus Quest 2 is coming to the market very soon. That I think it's something like 10 times more powerful than the Oculus Quest that just came out to the market a couple of years ago. And that kind of opens up many new interesting opportunities for enterprise use. One of the interesting things about VR has also been happening in Finland lately. There has been this one of the manufacturers for these VR headsets called Varjo, and they have now collaborated with one social VR application in a way to allow completely new way of remote collaboration that wasn't possible before. And because it's quite hard to explain what VR is without showing it, I'll try to demonstrate it with this video. So I'll quickly share this. I'll stop my screen share and share this link with you. So yeah, I hope you can see it. The thing is that this application is more or less similar what you just saw. It's that the collaborators are using this kind of a head-mounted displays at their homes. They might be all around the world. This Chris who's in the picture might be actually in another country at the same time. And what the information that you see around it is fully digital. The car might not be even existing in the real world. So you can display really high quality content that for design purposes. So here they are doing collaborative design of a car. So, for example, Varjo, and they are working with this really highly sophisticated industrial designs, where remote working otherwise would be really complex when you would try to explain to your collaborators, how the car should be and similar. But when you see it in front of your face, that's a completely new way of handling things. So I wanted to elaborate with you a bit on the potential impact of social extended reality for 5 key areas that we have now identified. There, of course, could be more, but these are something that we see really interesting. The first of them is when we use this, what you see before in the video is that we can involve many kinds of stakeholders to decision making from all around the world in virtual reality. And that's actually it doesn't have to be something that you know see in the upper picture, is that people would put VR goggles on and they would be there as one of those avatars and being able to meet kind of a face-to-face but in virtual reality. That's also helpful, but virtual reality is more important when we can display some information in front of us that is hard to explain. And of course it could be a situation as in the bottom figure is that, for example, we have been working together with one of the airports in Finland, and when there's a kind of a renovation project that might take a couple of years to be concluded. With virtual reality, we can visualize how in 2 or 3 years' time the design would look like, or how the terminal would look like. And you can, of course, involve your, for example, the staff members from the airport, or some of the passengers, or other shareholders, investors, or something, to look at the plans from this bird's eye view. But the power of VR is, of course, that you can, by clicking a mouse, you can kind of enter any of those spaces yourself. And what I'm trying to make an point here about is that you can do these new kinds of decision-making processes where people can actually see in front of them like something that doesn't exist in the world yet. And the figure in the top on the right down corner actually visualizes one particular apartment building that looks like a photograph. But actually, it's not. It's not a flat that exists yet. It's something that is been, 3D. It's 3D content that has been just like rendered really beautiful and realistic, so that if it's a kind of a situation where we need to showcase to a passenger or something how this terminal or one of the lobbies would look like, they of course expect really natural looking and realistic looking content, so that they can explore, walk around, and see that okay, this is how it would be. And this is, of course, the powerful thing about VR, that you can show really plain designs, but you can also use very, very complex and realistic designs. But of course, you always have a trade-off, is that this standalone devices that aren't connected to a powerful laptop don't usually have processing power enough, to visualize something that is really, really complex and realistic looking. And for that, you need more of this old-fashioned tethered, where you have cable to a powerful laptop and more computing power behind. So involving stakeholders to decision making is one of the key areas where social extended reality is likely to make an impact on. The other one is, especially now during this corona situation times, is this effective team working. So when we don't have the luxury with our teams to meet face to face, for example, with my own team, we have to do a lot of collaboration together. Collaborative designs, even when we do some technology designing. In VR, we can bring in kind of many kinds of collaboration tools that we have in Teams and similar, but the thing is that we can more or less, like in VR, feel that we are face to face. So the thing is that our brain thinks that we are with our collaborators in the same space, unlikely to, of course, to traditional video conferencing tools, because you don't have the 3D environment where you observe and see your friend and then maybe like shake hands and take eye contact and similar. So this is an area where there's a lot is happening at the moment. The third one that is really important, especially for many kinds of manufacturing and construction property management processes, is this remote assistance. And this is very typical for augmented reality, is that, when there are any kinds of devices, you might think part of a new janitor that has a big yard with so many things that he doesn't know or she doesn't know where things are at or how they should be maintained, because there might be so much tacit knowledge about the area with that some other person knows. Is that with augmented reality, you have ways to embed all kinds of visual information in front of the janitor's eyes. For example, something like where they can find some of the devices that are malfunctioning. So you can embed many kinds of visual information in front of the janitor's eyes, either with mobile application, with using your camera, or one of these augmented reality glasses. But also in a way that you can avoid many kinds of errors, because you don't have to spend so much time in struggling what one maybe malfunctioning device, when the other person who's capable of doing that can maybe synchronously tell you how to repair that. Or alternatively is that you could have even manuals and troubleshooting guidelines, pointing out that, hey, now you're looking at with the image detection, notices what you're looking at, and then there's digital information pointing out that do this and that to get through the issue that you have. The fourth one is really important and broad area. It's the training and simulation. So in VR, over time, it's been typical that when there are new employees or any kinds of tricky situations that need to be explained, is that we can use virtual reality to bring in, for example, like a motor, that we can break it into atoms and see how it works, that we can meet in VR and train situations that are quite hard to do in the physical environment. One example could be also that, if you're thinking about that there would be a big jumbo jet, related to airplanes, is that if you think that the one prototype of a jumbo jet might cost, could it be hundreds of millions? Is that you could think about how many staff members can you run through, actually training them within that jumbo jet, because it's physically located in one place. It's really expensive to build, and there's only a number of people that can get in at a time. But nowadays it's quite typical that, for example, in automotive, helicopters, and even this with airplanes and similar crafts, is that you can create virtual prototypes that are really realistic and responsive to what you are doing, and train people in a completely new scale, just because you can have the same simulation of the airplane, how it looks like. You can make it so immersive that the person actually feels that they are in the aircraft itself, even if they would be here in, in my upstairs of my own house. Is that you can, of course, train so many more people because the technology scales in a new way. The fifth one, it's also a big but more emerging area, is that social extended reality allows completely new ways of sales and marketing processes. Because you can just think about is that with social extended reality, you might think about buying an apartment, something that, you typically only see only visualizations of how they look like, but it's really different, if someone shows a picture of your kitchen in terms of you walking to your kitchen and opening the drawers and seeing it in your eyes. That's the thing about, virtual reality, is that you can display really high quality content and realistic looking content that doesn't exist yet in the world. So in a way, you can display how the apartment would look like in, for example, when it's ready. And the thing is that you can also embed multiple people there. It might be that I would be there with my wife looking at how the apartment looks like. And in the future, there will be, of course, more of the artificial intelligence embedded to virtual reality. At least potentially, is that how we behave and what we look like. Of course, we can check how the curtains and things like that, or compare those designs when we are in virtual reality. But in the future as well, it's quite likely that you could from how we behave, what we talk, and maybe what we are gazing at, is that we could either have a kind of a bot that kind of explains, takes us to the apartment and tries to kind of do the selling process. But of course, based on our behavior, it might be that you could put your best salesman to jump into the social VR where we are at from our homes, but again looking at our future home, and the salesperson of course come in and tries to of course seal the deal in a way. But this is an area where there's lots of things are happening, and there are many, dark side effects and many ethical considerations that, of course, need to be tapped with. And many kinds of misuse also that we want to, of course, avert, but something to keep an eye on. So if we think about these potential use cases that SXR is going to have an impact on, is that where does the value come from? One of the essential things is the value that comes from, sense making in virtual reality. And the thing is that when you have any kind of a 3D content, like in our physical environment, when we have a house, apartment, anything, this mouse or something like my phone, they are all 3D. And if you're trying to explain something, how my phone looks like, everyone will have a different opinion on or interpretation on how it looks like. But if I show it to you and you can display, like touch it and like browse it in your hand, everyone will have a same understanding on what it is. And that's the kind of a thing that in VR you can embed individuals in a realistic and immersive environment where they can do that kind of a sense making. And one of the really cool things about virtual reality is that it can, you can jump between different views. You can, if you have this kind of arena, for example, in Tampere, they are building this big new arena that's going to be ready in, I think, one or 2 years, is that you can, in virtual reality, of course, look how that arena looks like from the bird's eye view, in the city. But of course, you can also jump inside the buildings and see how they look like. Of course, those are just random images I found online to kind of a showcase, because we don't have the 3D models of that arena. But that's the basic idea, is that you can look at from the bird's eye view or from our natural first person view with our own eyes and in the realistic scale. Also, I think that there's a video that was, I think, pretty cool that kind of displays how people could, for example, view an apartment. So let's have a look on that one as well, if it works out. This one is it actually kind of also looks like something of like any kind of a video clip that you would have, but it's actually 3D content in virtual reality. And again, the user is using a head-mounted display and walking around as they would be, they actually feel like that they are in the apartment. But any of this content that they see can be interacted with. You can open the doors and similarly, but all of these have to, be developed by someone. Again, if the developers of VR haven't thought about that it's important to open the doors or change where the door is or how big it is, it won't be there by default. So that's always the thing, that the VR can embed so many types of content, but the ones who are ordering this kind of content or using this kind of content, they have to know exactly what they want and what is important. So if we think that from the value from sense making, 3D content in 3D environment, the other one where we can drive so much value with virtual reality is from this situated learning. So we can learn by doing things. And again, if we tell to one another on how to fix a motor or how the mechanics of it work, or look at the video, there's only maybe something like 30-60% of that we will absorb. But when we are actually interacting with that motor, it's a completely different case, because we can learn by doing things as in the real world. I hope my connection isn't too bad, but the internet is today a bit messier, I think, than usually. So there are many kind of like characteristics or potentials of VR and the kind of the levels of immersion that are there in the background that we don't go very deeply today. But it's more or less that in this simulation and training scenarios in VR, we can kind of give also a kind of a storyline that the person goes through. It can be something, that we have here in this video, which is, I think, pretty interesting, is that that storyline could be a safety training. So for example, something that would be hazardous or really dangerous in the real life. So it might be that, lives could be lost, you know, if you are working in some kind of with some industrial machinery and they start to malfunction, or there's a fire or something goes terribly wrong. You cannot really prepare individuals very well in real world settings if you are trying to kind of simulate them. But in virtual reality, you can make very realistic scenarios and even risky scenarios where you can train your staff members on how they should be dealing with such situations. And this is the kind of a learning by doing that I was mentioning about. And lately, there have been also coming this kind of a multi-user training scenario, so that not just one person, but it could, because normally we're at the workplace with multiple people, especially non-COVID times, is that you can train together with your co-workers in the same virtual space how that would look like, or the trainer or some can be there together with you to show how what you did wrong, or how things could be done differently. So we can gain value from this kind of a situated learning, and these are really typical, of course, in this training and simulation processes in aviation, manufacturing, medical care, construction business, and so on. The third part and really important part of where the value comes from in this use cases that we went through is this collaborative actions. You know, when we can have some form of an avatar. Again, those avatars could look really different in VR. They can be really realistic, or they can look like cartoon characters, depending if it's a professional or leisure application. Is that with those avatars we can have synchronous and asynchronous communication and find ways to collaborate with each other. We can not just do this kind of a learning by doing and like doing the sense making of looking 3D content in 3D space, but we can also transfer knowledge in teams, and this is really typical for collaborative design, decision making processes, and so on. And I'll show you this, one more video clip that displays what this is about. So this NVIDIA holodeck is one of these. Again, these are people that are using this their VR headsets to jump into the VR space where they can kind of act naturally. You have usually different types of controllers. Nowadays, even hand tracking that you don't need necessarily controllers with every single application, but you can have many kinds of content. For example, when there are this design activities of any kinds of properties or like buildings, where you can of course look at them in this realistic scale, have many kinds of collaboration tools, bring people who don't have these headsets via Skype or similar to join you in your design in virtual reality, but kind of the options are quite limitless here. And then we come to the kind of the last points that I would like to make with this presentation. So if we think that this is the kind of a third type of value, where again there are many kinds of industries that can make use of this collaborative work in automotive, architecture, construction, but we are also now I'm teaching data and software business, and actually I have 130 students in my course, and they now work remotely on their software business ideas, like thinking about new kind of startup ideas and similar. Is that 3 of the groups, or 11 individuals, have now these Oculus Quest devices at home, and instead of meeting in Teams or similar, they always meet in virtual reality, so that they do their collaborative actions fully in VR in some of these social virtual reality apps, because there are quite many coming to the market all the time, and many of them are free to use. And of course, many of them have different, functionalities available for the user. But we're going to hear next week from them, how their, first collaborative actions have been working in VR, because, it's really a new way also for learners to kind of come together, not face to face, not via video conferencing, but actually in VR. So I'm going to hear next week. So hopefully I can somehow distribute this information to you as well, how it went like. But the basic idea is that the potentials of technology kind of are there. There are many of these applications that you can download to your many of these devices. You either have to pay for a license or you can use them for free. But it's really typical still nowadays that many of these really comprehensive simulation software is something that is customly developed for these organizations who are using them, for example, automotive or aviation company. And when we think about from the perspective of using these applications, that I'm, the teacher who wants to use VR in my own courses, or there would be a company who wants to adopt one of these solutions, is that there are so many things that need to be all considered. And of course, one of them is this content creation and any kind of what type of content do you want to bring into the virtual space? Because again, it might not be too value adding to have just a empty VR space where you can meet face to face and discuss. But it might be that you need somehow this sense-making perspective, that some kind of a 3D content that can be there. And of course, you have to think about is that should the users of VR be able to somehow to manipulate that content, and if it's a construction or some design activity, I would think that they would be needed to manipulate the content that is there. And of course, that is a completely new world of its own. The company adopting has to be aware of that they are planning to do this, because VR also shouldn't be used just as a kind of a additional tool to do something randomly or visualize something randomly. It should be something like an integral part of the business processes, no matter if it's about teaching or pedagogical processes or like in companies, the core business, the design activities. And this, of course, goes to the content creation, what needs to be there. But in many cases, you might need to make integrations with other information systems, where there's information about flowing from your workflow management system to VR and vice versa. So this integration to business processes really need to be considered well. We also know that you need to have really different types of organizational capabilities to use technology, this kind of technology that is quite extreme, because again, especially for new users, it's quite much, to jump into a really realistic VR environment and start using it. The first few minutes are always, for the first users, when they are there, they're just overwhelmed. And it might be that for some it's the nausea thing, but again, with many of the high quality new devices and new applications and with good refresh rates, the nausea thing has been, of course, reduced quite a lot. But just to kind of the overload to your senses might be quite tremendous the first times you use it. So you have to have, of course, technical capabilities, but the training activities for the new employees to start using virtual reality, you need to have a bit more time compared to many other technologies, because it's quite extreme technology. It's kind of I would say, high risk, high gain technology in a way that there are so many things that you can do in a completely new way, but you have to, of course, take avoid risks on so many levels. You need to, of course, have the technical capabilities. You have to have some kind of organizational processes, training and similar to embed this technology. But someone, of course, in the organizations needs to be the one who identifies, what are the value-adding use cases. So again, what is it in our organization, or for example, in education, in these new ways of teaching, is that where does this virtual reality really add value, and where this kind of a multi-user perspective is required, where multiple people can be in the same virtual space and collaborate with each other in new ways. So identification of those use cases is really, really critical. Lastly, to summarize the kind of the presentation, is that I hope you got some sense of what we are doing in my research team. We have this few European projects at the moment where we are like experimenting a bit on this social virtual reality. Some of them are for education, such as VR Insight project that is soon ending. There are many kind of modules that we offer for higher education, so you might want to go and see what they might be for you. In VAM Realities project, we are looking at the VR adoption in European SMEs. So we're trying to kind of study how we can get this technology adopted by those companies. And in this ECIU University, it's a European university initiative where we're also like finding new ways to get students to do this virtual mobility, you know, like work beyond the borders. But in many cases, we are also experimenting how this group works, collaborative work can happen in virtual reality. So I hope with this presentation, you've gotten some idea of what the potential use cases for this multi-user VR and augmented reality is, and where the kind of the value comes from. Is it sense making, or is it learning by doing, or is it more about collaborative and transforming knowledge? But we're really just scratching the surface here. It's a new area with many kinds of new possibilities. So thanks for listening to my presentation. That's me in my upstairs with the guitars, attending one VR event just a while ago. So I'm happy to take your questions and wish you a very good International Week. Thank you.
So we have there two questions. First is, can high latency be a problem for social XR?
Sorry, can you repeat? What could be a problem?
High latency.
High latency.
Yeah.
I think many issues. The latency is really a big issue, especially if you're having conversations. You know, we had this one virtual event. You know, it was a conference. You know, usually we are in conference dinners next to each other and discussing, and there's no latency issues or something similar. But there was one. We were standing in a group. All of us, you know, were from homes like this, and one of us had really big problems with the network. So the voice was breaking down all the time, and suddenly this person teleported to another part of the room, and we had really intense discussion, and the kind of one person was dropped out kind of because of that. So similarly, what you usually have in Teams, you have similar latency and other issues in social extended reality as well.
Okay, thanks. And next question is there some research about impact of social XR on our brains?
There have been, of course, some studies on human cognition, and also, but I think in terms of the brains, it might be quite broad question, but there are many aspects of human psychology that has been studied lately. So I'm not sure whether they are too comprehensive at the moment. So I think they are both these bright sides and dark sides in a way. But in terms of like whether they cause some trauma or similar, there's nothing. There shouldn't be too many issues on that. But of course, I think depending on what kind of a content you present to people, and because people, you know, tend, when it's really immersive environment, you also kind of treat it as it would be real. And if it's some kind of a horror situation that you are really fearing, is that of course it can be quite even traumatizing for the person. And by that, of course, there might be many kinds of implications on human brain or on our concentration and on our you know, any kinds of negatives and positives. But in terms of this negatives, I haven't seen too many myself yet.
Thanks for answering. And the last one is that someone regards you. Good luck with future research. Thank
you very much, and thanks for joining the session. Thanks.
So thank you for your presentation. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye, everyone.